The massive space station hung in the void like a jewel made of metal and light. Council Station Alpha was the heart of galactic civilization, where dozens of alien species gathered to make decisions that affected billions of lives across the stars. Today, it would witness something that would change the galaxy forever. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the gleaming corridors, her hand gently holding that of her 8-year-old daughter Maya. The little girl's eyes were wide with wonder as she stared at the incredible sights around them. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians glided past with their flowing robes. 6-legged Nexari clicked their way across the polished floors. Strange beings that looked like walking crystals chimed softly as they moved. "Mom, why do they all look so different?" Maya whispered, tugging on her mother's formal diplomatic uniform. Sarah smiled down at her daughter. "Because the universe is a big place, sweetheart. Every world creates different kinds of life." They were here for an important ceremony. After 5 years of careful negotiations, Earth was finally being considered for full membership in the Galactic Council. Humanity had been discovered 50 years ago by Altarian scouts, and the process of joining the galactic community had been slow and difficult. Most species saw humans as primitive newcomers. Earth's technology was centuries behind the rest of the galaxy. Their fastest ships could barely reach the nearest star systems. Their weapons were crude projectile throwers and simple energy beams. To the advanced civilizations of the Council, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. But some Council members saw potential in humanity. Humans were curious, adaptable, and showed remarkable creativity in solving problems. Ambassador Chen had spent years proving that her species deserved a chance to join the galactic community. Today was supposed to be a celebration of that progress. Maya's presence was meant to show the Council that humans were a peaceful, family-oriented species. Several alien dignitaries had already expressed delight at meeting such a young human. The child's innocent questions and bright smile had charmed even the usually stern Confederation representatives. However, not everyone was pleased. The Vortaki delegation stood apart from the others, their tall angular forms radiating disapproval. Their leader, Hierarch Zethkar, watched the human child with obvious disgust. The Vortaki were one of the oldest species in the Council, and they believed strongly in order, tradition, and proper behavior. "The child should not be here," Zethkar said to his aide in their harsh, clicking language. "This is a place for serious diplomatic work, not for juveniles to run about disturbing the peace." His aide, a younger Vortaki named Kethmar, nodded agreement. The humans show their chaotic nature by bringing offspring to such an important gathering. It proves they are not ready for membership. As the ceremony began, Maya stayed close to her mother, trying her best to be quiet and well-behaved. The various species gave speeches about cooperation, peace, and the bright future of galactic civilization. The translation devices allowed everyone to understand each other, though some concepts didn't translate perfectly. When the formal presentations ended, a cultural exchange tour was arranged. Representatives from different species would show off artifacts from their homeworlds, sharing the richness of their civilizations. Maya held her mother's hand tightly as they moved from display to display. The Altarian exhibit featured beautiful crystal sculptures that sang when light touched them. The Nexari showed off intricate mechanical devices that moved with impossible precision. Each display was more amazing than the last, and Maya's excitement grew with every step. Then they reached the Vortaki display. The centerpiece was a black stone pyramid covered in golden symbols. It was called the Shard of Eternal Order, and according to Hierarch Zethkar's explanation, it had been blessed by their ancestors over 10,000 years ago. It represented everything the Vortaki valued: tradition, stability, and unwavering law. "This artifact has been touched only by the highest-ranking members of our society," Zethkar announced proudly. "It is sacred beyond measure." Maya stared at the pyramid in fascination. The golden symbols seemed to move and shift in the light, creating patterns that her young mind found mesmerizing. Without thinking, she let go of her mother's hand and stepped closer to get a better look. "Maya, stay close," Sarah called softly, but she was distracted by a question from another diplomat. The little girl moved closer to the display case. The pyramid was so beautiful, and the symbols were so interesting. She wondered what they would feel like under her fingers. Before anyone could stop her, Maya reached out and touched the glass barrier. But the barrier was not solid light like most displays. It was a ceremonial field that allowed worthy individuals to approach the artifact closely. Maya's small hand passed right through and touched the sacred pyramid. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Hierarch Zethkar let out a shriek of rage that silenced the entire hall. Every Vortaki present fell to their knees, crying out in their clicking language. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with grinding metal. "Desecration!" Zethkar roared, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "The sacred artifact has been defiled by an unworthy touch." Sarah rushed to her daughter's side, pulling Maya away from the display. The little girl was crying, confused and frightened by the sudden chaos around her. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quickly, her diplomatic training taking over. "She didn't mean any harm. She's just a child. We'll pay for any cleaning or purification rituals needed." But Zethkar was beyond reason. His species believed that their sacred objects could only be touched by those who had earned the right through decades of religious study and purification. An alien child touching their most holy artifact was the worst possible violation of their laws. "Payment is not sufficient," the hierarch declared. "By the ancient laws of the Vortaki, written in blood and honored for millennia, the one who defiles the sacred must face the ultimate penalty." A chill ran through the assembled diplomats as they realized what he meant. "You cannot be serious," said the Altarian representative. "She is a child. She meant no offense." "Ignorance is not an excuse," Zethkar replied coldly. "The law is clear. The penalty for desecration is death." The debate that followed was heated and desperate. Sarah begged, pleaded, and offered every form of compensation she could think of. Other species tried to negotiate alternative punishments. But the Vortaki were unmovable. Their law was absolute, and they demanded that the council uphold it. The vote was called 3 hours later. 47 species voted. 22 supported the Vortaki demand. 16 voted against. 9 abstained, unwilling to oppose such a powerful member of the council. Maya Chen, 8 years old and guilty of nothing more than curiosity, was sentenced to death. The execution was carried out immediately as Vortaki law required. A disintegration field reduced the little girl to atoms in seconds. It was broadcast across the galaxy as an example of proper justice and the importance of respecting galactic law. Sarah's screams echoed through the station corridors. Long after the deed was done, the human delegation was escorted from the station within the hour. As their ship pulled away from Council Alpha, Sarah held her husband Tom as he wept. Both parents stared out at the stars, their hearts broken and their faith in galactic civilization destroyed. Behind them, the council continued its business as if nothing had happened. But something had changed in the universe that day. A line had been crossed that could never be uncrossed. Earth would remember what had been done to their child, and Earth would respond. The news reached Earth like a shockwave traveling faster than light itself. Within 6 hours of Maya Chen's execution, every major city on the planet erupted in protests. Millions of people poured into the streets, their anger burning hotter than the sun. They carried pictures of the little girl who had died for nothing more than touching an alien object. They demanded justice, vengeance, and answers. In New York, the United Nations building was surrounded by crowds chanting Maya's name. In London, protesters filled Trafalgar Square until no stone could be seen. Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, and 100 other cities witnessed the same outpouring of rage. Humanity had never been more united in their fury. President Elizabeth Warren called an emergency session of the UN Security Council. The Great Hall filled with representatives from every nation on Earth, their faces grim with shared purpose. The debate was swift and decisive. "We formally withdraw from all Galactic Council proceedings," Warren announced to the world. "Earth will no longer participate in any diplomatic relations with the species that murdered our child." The public response was carefully measured. Humanity would not declare war against vastly superior alien technology. They would not make threats they could not back up. Instead, Earth would simply turn its back on the galactic community and focus on protecting its own people. But behind closed doors, a very different conversation was taking place. Admiral Catherine Torres sat in a conference room buried 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. The facility didn't exist on any public map. The elevator that brought her here required security clearances that only 12 people on Earth possessed. Around the table sat the most powerful military leaders from every major nation. The President has given us authorization, Torres said quietly. Operation Ancient Dawn is now active. General Liu Wei of the Chinese Space Command nodded grimly. How long since the protocols were last updated? 18 months, replied Marshal Petrov from the Russian Federation. All systems have been maintained and upgraded on schedule. Torres activated a holographic display that filled the room with light. What appeared was not the modest collection of orbital defense platforms and exploration vessels that the galaxy knew about. Instead, the display showed something that would have shocked every alien intelligence analyst in known space. Thousands of ships, massive battle cruisers with weapon systems that could crack moons, stealth fighters that could phase in and out of normal space, carriers that housed swarms of automated attack drones, all of it hidden, all of it waiting. 312 years, Torres said softly. That's how long we've been preparing for this day. The truth was staggering. Humanity had not discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had reverse-engineered it from a crashed alien vessel in 1711. The ship had belonged to a species called the Zephyrians, explorers who had died when their vessel malfunctioned near Earth. For over 3 centuries, humanity had been secretly expanding into space, not the slow, careful expansion that the galaxy witnessed, but a massive colonization effort that spanned dozens of star systems. Hidden bases were built in asteroid fields and on the dark sides of dead worlds. Entire fleets were constructed in mobile shipyards that drifted through empty space. Every alien species that made contact with humanity was carefully studied. Their technology was analyzed, copied, and improved upon. Their weaknesses were cataloged. Their military tactics were observed and countered. Earth's scientists had 300 years to prepare for any possible conflict with galactic civilization. The primitive human technology that aliens looked down upon was nothing more than a carefully maintained illusion. Earth's real capabilities were hidden behind layers of deception and misdirection. The orbital defense platforms around Earth were real, but they were the least important part of humanity's military might. The Vortaki Empire controls 47 star systems, General Liu Wei reported, reading from his secure tablet. Their military consists of approximately 8,000 frontline warships and 30,000 support vessels. Their shield technology is based on harmonic frequency manipulation, added Dr. Sarah Mackenzie, Earth's leading expert on alien technology. We've been studying captured samples for 60 years. Our phase weapons will cut through their defenses like paper. Marshal Petrov pulled up detailed star charts. Their homeworld of Vortakis Prime has a population of 12 billion. The planet is heavily defended, but their orbital installations follow predictable patterns. A concentrated assault could neutralize their defenses within hours. Torres listened to the reports with cold satisfaction. Every detail had been planned, every contingency prepared for. The aliens thought they knew humanity, but they had only seen what Earth wanted them to see. What about the rest of the Council? Asked Admiral Chen from the Pacific Fleet. Some species voted against the execution. Our priority is the Vortaki, Torres replied. But any species that interferes with our operations will be treated as hostile. The Altarians and Nexari showed some sympathy for us, so we'll give them a chance to stay neutral. The others? She shrugged. They made their choice when they allowed a child to be murdered. The meeting continued for hours as the assembled military leaders finalized their plans. Strike teams would be deployed to Vortaki space within days. The attacks would begin small, targeting isolated patrol ships and supply convoys. As the Vortaki responded, Earth would escalate, revealing more and more of their hidden capabilities. The goal was not just military victory. It was to send a message to the entire galaxy about what happened when you harmed a human child. Meanwhile, on the surface, President Warren faced the media for the 3rd time that day. The questions came fast and angry. Madam President, what is Earth's response going to be? The people demand action. Warren's face was carved from stone. We are exploring all diplomatic options. Earth will not be drawn into a war we cannot win. But surely we can't just let them get away with murdering Maya. The death of Maya Chen is a tragedy that will never be forgotten, Warren replied carefully. But we must think about the safety of all humanity, not just our desire for revenge. The press conference ended with more questions than answers. The public remained angry but was told to trust their leaders to find the best path forward. Most people believed that Earth's options were limited. How could one small planet fight an empire that spanned dozens of star systems? They had no idea that their planet had been preparing for exactly this scenario for over 3 centuries. That night, as Earth settled into an uneasy sleep, Admiral Torres stood on the observation deck of Battle Station Omega. The massive fortress hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit, invisible to any scan the aliens might attempt. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the running lights of 1,000 ships as they prepared for deployment. Each vessel represented decades of careful planning and construction. The hulls were made from materials that didn't exist in any alien database. The weapons used principles that no galactic physicist had ever theorized. The crews had trained their entire lives for this moment. "Signal the fleet commanders," Torres said to her aide. "Operation Ancient Dawn commences in 72 hours. Target priority is any Vortaki vessel or installation. Rules of engagement are simple. No survivors, no witnesses, no mercy." As the orders went out across the hidden armada, Torres thought about a little girl who had died for touching an alien artifact. Maya Chen would be avenged. The galaxy would learn what happened when they underestimated humanity. The hunt was about to begin. Captain Zektor had been patrolling the outer edges of Vortaki space for 15 years. His ship, the Righteous Talon, was a standard patrol cruiser with a crew of 200. Today was supposed to be another routine sweep of the shipping lanes near the Cathara system. The first sign that something was wrong came from the sensor operator. "Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures about 50,000 kilometers off our port side." Zektor moved to the sensor station, his forearms moving efficiently across the controls. The Vortaki had evolved from predators, and their military training emphasized quick responses to any threat. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen displayed the area around their ship. Space looked empty, just the usual background radiation and distant starlight. But the sensors were detecting something else, something that didn't quite fit the normal patterns. "It's like there's something there, but not there," the sensor operator said, confusion clear in his voice. "The readings keep shifting." Before Zektor could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights flickered and went red as the automatic defense systems activated. "Multiple contacts," the weapons officer shouted. "They're all around us." Ships materialized out of nothing. One moment space was empty. The next it was filled with sleek vessels that looked like nothing in any Vortaki database. They were dark gray, almost black, with smooth curves that seemed to bend light around them. "Open a channel," Zektor ordered. "This is Captain Zektor of the Vortaki Imperial Navy. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." There was no response. The alien ships simply hung in space like predators surrounding wounded prey. "Sir, they're charging weapons," the tactical officer reported. "Energy signatures are unlike anything I've seen before." "Raise shields and prepare to return fire," Zektor commanded. "Send a distress signal to Fleet Command." The Righteous Talon's shields came online just as the alien ships opened fire. Beams of purple energy struck the barrier around the Vortaki vessel, but instead of being deflected or absorbed, they passed right through as if the shields weren't even there. The first beam cut through the ship's hull like a knife through soft cloth. Atmosphere rushed out into space as entire sections were sliced away. The second beam destroyed the engine room, leaving the Righteous Talon dead in space. Zektor had just enough time to realize that his ship's weapons couldn't even target the attackers properly before a third beam cut through the bridge. He died without ever learning who had killed him or why. The attack lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, the Righteous Talon was nothing but drifting wreckage. The alien ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving no trace of their presence except for the destroyed patrol cruiser. The distress signal never made it past the ship's communications array. This scene repeated itself dozens of times over the next week. Vortaki patrol ships, supply convoys, and scout vessels simply disappeared without warning. Sometimes wreckage was found floating in space. More often, there was nothing left at all. At first, the Vortaki military command thought they were dealing with pirates or raiders. The outer regions of their empire had always been troubled by criminal elements who preyed on merchant shipping. But as more ships vanished, patterns began to emerge that made no sense. Admiral Kethvar stood in the command center of the Imperial Naval Base on Vortakis Prime, staring at a tactical display that showed their recent losses. Red dots marked the locations where ships had gone missing. The pattern was random yet purposeful, hitting targets across multiple star systems. 63 vessels in 8 days, his aide reported grimly. Everything from single scout ships to entire convoy escorts. What do the survivors tell us? Cuthbert demanded. That's the problem, sir. There are no survivors. Every attack has left no witnesses. No escape pods, no distress calls that made it through. The Admiral's mandibles clicked together in frustration. In over 2 centuries of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. Enemies could be fought, defeated, negotiated with, or at least understood. But how could you fight ghosts? What about wreckage analysis? The Science Division has examined what little we've found, the aide replied, pulling up another display. The weapon signatures are completely unknown. They seem to use some kind of phase technology that bypasses our shields entirely. The metal composition suggests manufacturing techniques that don't match any known species. Admiral Kethavar studied the data with growing unease. The Vortaki Empire had detailed intelligence on every major military power in the galaxy. Their weapons, their tactics, their capabilities were all well documented. But this new threat used technology that didn't appear in any database. Could it be the humans? A junior officer suggested hesitantly. The suggestion was met with derisive clicking from the other officers. Kethavar silenced them with a gesture. Explain your reasoning, he ordered. Well, sir, the attacks began just days after the execution of the human child on Council Station Alpha. The timing seems coincidental. The humans barely have faster-than-light travel, Kethavar replied dismissively. Their most advanced warships are centuries behind our technology. They couldn't possibly mount this kind of operation. But even as he said it, doubt crept into the Admiral's mind. The timing was suspicious, and there was something about the precision of the attacks that suggested they were more than random piracy. Double our patrols, he ordered. I want 3 ship formations minimum. If these raiders want to play games, we'll show them what happens when they target the Imperial Navy. The increased patrols made no difference. If anything, the attacks became bolder. Entire squadrons began disappearing, their fate unknown until wreckage was eventually found drifting in space. The Phantom Raiders seemed to know exactly where every Vortaki ship would be, striking with perfect timing and overwhelming force. On the 5th week after the attacks began, the Raiders made their most audacious strike yet. Forward Operating Base Kethmore was a heavily defended military installation on the edge of Vortaki space. It housed 50,000 personnel and served as a staging area for deep space operations. The base's commander, General Vortaki, was reviewing patrol reports when alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The massive orbital platforms that protected the base opened fire at targets that sensors could barely detect. But the attackers weren't interested in a prolonged battle. They struck like lightning, their ships phasing in and out of normal space faster than the base's weapons could track. In less than an hour, every defensive platform was destroyed and the base itself was left as a frozen tomb. Recovery teams found the personnel at their posts, flash frozen by some unknown weapon that had somehow bypassed the base's atmospheric systems. 50,000 Vortaki military personnel had been killed without damaging a single corridor or piece of equipment. The message was clear: nowhere was safe. Back on Vortaki's prime, panic was beginning to set in. The Imperial Navy had lost over 300 ships in 2 major installations. Trade convoys refused to enter Vortaki space. Other species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the Empire's ability to protect its own territory. Hierarch Zethkar himself called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The same leader who had demanded the death of a human child now found himself begging for help against an unknown enemy. The attacks are coordinated and precise, he told the assembled representatives. This is not the work of pirates or raiders. Someone is conducting a military campaign against the Vortaki Empire. The Altarian representative leaned forward. Do you have any evidence of who might be responsible? Zethkar's silence spoke volumes. The proud Vortaki, who had always prided themselves on their military might and intelligence gathering, had no idea who was systematically destroying their forces. We request Council assistance in identifying and stopping these attacks, he said finally. The response was less than enthusiastic. Several species pointed out that the Vortaki had many enemies due to their rigid enforcement of ancient laws. Others suggested that this might be an internal revolt or civil war. Only the Nexari representative asked the question that everyone was thinking but afraid to voice. Could this be connected to the recent execution of the human child? The suggestion was met with skeptical clicking from the Vortaki delegation. Impossible, Zethkar declared. The humans lack the technology for such operations. Their entire fleet consists of primitive vessels that could barely threaten a single patrol ship. But doubt was spreading throughout the council chambers. The timing was too convenient to ignore. The precision of the attack suggested detailed knowledge of Vortaki military operations. And there was something coldly methodical about the campaign that felt very human. As the council session ended without resolution, intelligence services across the galaxy began focusing their attention on Earth. Long-range scans of the human home system showed nothing unusual. The same collection of orbital platforms, civilian stations, and exploration vessels that had been there for decades. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the hunt continued. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the stealth destroyer Nightfall, watching as another Vortaki convoy died in purple fire. The Vortaki dreadnought Eternal Vengeance limped through space like a wounded animal fleeing from predators. Half of its hull was torn away, its shields were down, and only emergency power kept the life support systems running. Of the ship's crew of 8,000, only 12 had survived. Captain Mekthor was one of them, though barely. His exoskeleton was cracked in 3 places, and purple blood seeped from wounds across his torso. But he was alive, and he had seen things that would change the galaxy's understanding of the war. The distress signal was picked up by a council patrol near the Centauri Nexus. When the rescue ships arrived, they found a Vortaki officer babbling about ghost ships and impossible weapons. Most of the rescuers assumed he was suffering from battle shock. But when Captain Mekthor was brought before the emergency council session 3 days later, his testimony was clear and terrifying. They came from nowhere, he told the assembled representatives. Our sensors showed empty space, then suddenly we were surrounded by 50 ships. They were black as the void itself, and they moved like they weren't bound by normal physics. The Altarian representative leaned forward. Can you describe these vessels in more detail? Mekthor's mandibles clicked nervously. They were sleek, organic-looking, no hard edges or straight lines, and they had markings on their hulls, a blue field with white symbols. A murmur ran through the council chambers. Several species recognized that description, though they could hardly believe it. The human flag, whispered the Nexari delegate. Impossible, Hierarch Zethkar declared from his seat. Humans lack the technology for such ships. Their vessels are primitive, barely capable of interstellar travel. But Mekthor continued his testimony, describing weapons that phased through shields, ships that appeared and disappeared at will, and tactics that showed intimate knowledge of Vortaki military procedures. They knew our shield frequencies, he said. They knew our weapon ranges, our communication protocols, our standard formations. It was like they had been studying us for years. The council session erupted in debate. Some representatives demanded immediate action against Earth. Others argued that there was no proof humans were responsible, but doubt was spreading, and several species began to distance themselves from the Vortaki position. While the council argued, intelligence services across the galaxy focused their attention on the Sol system. Deep space reconnaissance ships were dispatched to observe Earth's defenses from long range. What they found matched all previous reports. A modest collection of orbital platforms, a few dozen exploration vessels, and the expected civilian infrastructure. Admiral Torres watched the alien scout ships from the bridge of her flagship. The massive vessel hung in the shadow of Saturn's rings, completely invisible to their sensors. Around her, the command staff monitored the reconnaissance efforts with quiet amusement. They're trying very hard to find us, commented Captain Rodriguez from the tactical station. Let them look, Torres replied. It's time they learned the truth anyway. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Torres. Commence Operation Revelation. Let's show our visitors what they're really dealing with. Across the Sol system, stealth fields began to deactivate. The alien reconnaissance ships suddenly found their sensors overwhelmed by impossible readings. Where empty space had existed moments before, massive fleets of warships began to materialize. They appeared in the asteroid belt around the gas giants in the outer system, and even in Earth's orbital space. Thousands of vessels. Battle cruisers the size of mountains, carriers that could house entire armies, destroyers that bristled with weapons of unknown design. The hidden fleet was revealed in all its terrifying glory, and it was larger than the combined navies of half the galactic powers. The reconnaissance ships fled immediately, their crews too shocked to do anything but run. Within hours, their reports were being transmitted to every major power in the galaxy. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. How had the humans hidden such a massive fleet? Where had they acquired such advanced technology? And how long had they been preparing for war? Admiral Torres didn't wait for the aliens to process their shock. She opened a communication channel that broadcast to every receiver in known space. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm and steady. "I am Admiral Catherine Torres of the Earth Defense Force. For too long you have seen humanity as weak, primitive, and harmless. That was a mistake." The transmission showed images of the revealed fleet, each ship representing technology that surpassed anything the Council had ever seen. 57 days ago, you murdered a human child. Maya Chen was 8 years old. Her only crime was curiosity. You killed her to satisfy the bloodthirsty laws of a species that values tradition over justice. Torres's image filled screens across the galaxy as she continued. You thought we would accept this injustice because we were too weak to respond. You were wrong. We have been preparing for this day for over 3 centuries. The transmission cut to footage of the recent attacks on Vortaki forces, ships appearing from nowhere, weapons that cut through the strongest defenses, entire fleets disappearing without a trace. Every Vortaki ship, station and world is now a military target, Torres declared. Every species that supports them will be treated as an enemy. You wanted to see what happens when you harm a human child. Now you know. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On Council Station Alpha, emergency sessions ran around the clock as representatives tried to understand the magnitude of their miscalculation. The humans hadn't just hidden their military capabilities, they had created a force that could threaten the entire galactic order. Species that had voted for Maya's execution began to panic. The crystalline hegemony recalled all their ships to defensive positions. The Serpentine Alliance offered to mediate between Earth and the Vortaki. Even the mighty Confederation began to reconsider their previous dismissal of human capabilities. But the Vortaki Empire was not ready to surrender. Hierarch Zethkar called for a full military mobilization, demanding that every available ship be prepared for the defense of their homeworld. The humans may have surprised us, he declared to his war council, but numbers alone do not determine victory. We have faced greater threats before and emerged triumphant. Grand Admiral Kethvar was less optimistic. Hierarch, their technology is beyond anything we've encountered. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses and our shields are useless against their attacks. Then we will adapt, Zethkar replied coldly. Order all research facilities to analyze the wreckage from the human attacks. Find their weaknesses, and prepare the Judgment Fleet for immediate deployment. The Judgment Fleet was the Vortaki Empire's ultimate weapon, 10,000 warships including their most advanced dreadnoughts and battle stations. It had never been deployed at full strength, but the situation called for desperate measures. As the Vortaki prepared for war, other species made different choices. The Altarians formally withdrew from the Council decision that had resulted in Maya's death. The Nixari offered humanitarian aid to any human colonies. Even some former allies of the Vortaki began to distance themselves from the increasingly isolated empire. But Earth was not interested in diplomacy. The time for talking had ended when Maya Chen died. Admiral Torres reviewed the intelligence reports from across Vortaki space. Her ships had destroyed over 1,000 enemy vessels and eliminated 17 military installations. Vortaki territory was in chaos, with civilian shipping completely halted and military forces pulled back to defend core worlds. They're mobilizing their main fleet, reported Captain Chen from the Intelligence Division. Our sources indicate they're planning a direct assault on Earth, Torres smiled coldly. Perfect. Let them come. It's time to end this war permanently. She activated the communication system again, this time sending a direct message to Hierarch Zethkar himself. You want to know who we really are? She said, her voice filled with quiet menace. We are the species you underestimated. We are the hunters you mistook for prey. We are the nightmare you created when you murdered our child. The message included coordinates for a rendezvous point in neutral space. Bring your entire fleet, Torres continued. Bring every ship you have. Come and face the consequences of your actions. We'll be waiting. As the transmission ended, the Vortaki War Council fell silent. They had demanded this confrontation, but now that it was offered, many wondered if they were ready for what would come next. In the depths of space, the human fleet began to move. Thousands of ships emerged from hidden bases and stealth positions, converging on the designated coordinates. The ancient fleet was going to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final battle was about to begin. The space around Kepler 442 had never seen so many ships in one place. The Vortaki Judgment Fleet hung in formation like a wall of metal and death, 10,000 vessels strong. Every class of warship in the Imperial Navy was represented, from massive dreadnoughts to swarms of fighter craft. Hierarch Zethkar stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Never in the Empire's history had such force been assembled in one place. Whatever tricks the humans possessed, they could not possibly stand against the combined might of the Imperial Navy. "All ships report ready for combat," announced Grand Admiral Kethvar. "Long-range sensors show no sign of the enemy fleet." Zethkar clicked his mandibles impatiently. "They will come. Their arrogance demands it. When they arrive, we will crush them utterly and show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge Vortaki might." But doubt gnawed at the edges of his confidence. The human ships that had been destroying his forces possessed technology that defied explanation. Their weapons ignored shields, their vessels appeared and vanished at will, and their tactics showed an understanding of Vortaki procedures that should have been impossible. The answer came at exactly the appointed time. Space itself seemed to ripple as the human fleet materialized around them. Not the few dozen primitive vessels that intelligence reports had described, but thousands of sleek, deadly ships that moved with predatory grace. They appeared on all sides of the Vortaki formation, surrounding the enemy fleet in a perfect sphere. "Impossible," Kethvar whispered, staring at the tactical display. "How many ships do they have?" The count continued to climb as more vessels decloaked. 5,000, 7,000, 10,000. The numbers matched the Vortaki fleet, but these ships were like nothing anyone had ever seen. They were beautiful in their deadliness, flowing curves of dark metal that seemed to absorb light itself. "Open a channel," Zethkar ordered, trying to maintain his composure. Admiral Torres's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship hummed with quiet efficiency. Human officers moved with calm precision, their faces showing no fear of the massive enemy force surrounding them. "Hierarch Zethkar," Torres said quietly, "you came good. It's time you faced justice for what you did to Maya Chen. You think your parlor tricks frighten us?" Zethkar replied, though his voice carried less conviction than before. "We are the Vortaki Empire. We have ruled the stars for millennia, and we are humanity," Torres responded. "We've been watching you for 3 centuries, learning your weaknesses, preparing for this moment. Did you really think we would let the murder of our child go unanswered?" The truth was devastating in its simplicity. For over 300 years, while the galaxy believed humans were primitive newcomers, Earth had been building a vast interstellar empire. Hidden colonies, secret research facilities, and massive shipyards had been established across dozens of star systems. Every alien species that made contact with humanity had been carefully studied. Their technology was analyzed and improved upon. Their military tactics were observed and countered. Their social structures were mapped and their weaknesses catalogued. The public face of humanity, the small collection of exploration ships and orbital platforms around Earth, was nothing more than an elaborate deception. The real human presence in the galaxy was vast, advanced, and utterly hidden from alien observation. "You want to know how we stayed hidden for so long?" Torres continued. "Simple. We gave you exactly what you expected to see. Primitive humans struggling with basic space travel. We fed your arrogance and let you underestimate us." She gestured to the display behind her, which showed the true scope of human expansion. Star maps revealed colonies in distant systems that no alien had ever discovered. Manufacturing centers that produced technology centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed. Military academies where generations of humans had trained for exactly this confrontation. Every time one of your scout ships visited our system, we made sure they saw only what we wanted them to see, Torres explained. A few outdated defensive platforms, some slow cargo haulers, research stations working on laughably primitive projects. The revelation was staggering. While the Vortaki had spent centuries building their empire through conquest and intimidation, Humanity had been quietly establishing a presence that dwarfed their achievements. "You killed Maya Chen because you thought we were too weak to stop you," Torres said, her voice growing cold. "That was your first mistake. Your second was thinking you could face the consequences of that action." Zethkar tried to muster his remaining authority. "We outnumber you. Our ships are proven in battle across the galaxy." "Are they?" Torres asked with a slight smile. The battle began not with a massive exchange of fire, but with a demonstration of technological superiority that left the Vortaki fleet helpless. Human ships phased in and out of normal space, appearing beside enemy vessels and disappearing before return fire could be targeted. Their weapons were surgical in their precision. Instead of destroying Vortaki ships, they disabled them with beams that passed through shields and armor as if they weren't there. Engine rooms were neutralized, weapon systems were overloaded, and life support was carefully preserved. The Vortaki fleet tried to respond, but their weapons couldn't lock onto targets that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Their shields were useless against phase weapons that operated on principles their science couldn't comprehend. Within an hour, thousands of Imperial warships were drifting helplessly in space. "Surrender," Torres broadcast to the disabled fleet. "Your crews will be treated according to the laws of war, but the leaders responsible for Maya's death will face trial." Some Vortaki ships tried to self-destruct rather than face capture, but even that was denied to them. Human boarding parties phased directly through their hulls, appearing on bridges and engineering decks to prevent any desperate final acts. Hierarch Zethkar found himself face-to-face with human soldiers who had materialized on his flagship's bridge. They wore armor that seemed to bend light around it, and their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. "Hierarch Zethkar," said the lead soldier, removing his helmet to reveal a human face marked by cold determination, "you are under arrest for the murder of Maya Chen and crimes against humanity." The proud leader of the Vortaki Empire was taken into custody without firing a shot. The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. In less than 6 hours, the most powerful military force in Vortaki history had been completely neutralized by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Not a single human ship had been lost, while the entire Imperial Navy was now under Earth's control. But Admiral Torres was not finished. As Vortaki leaders were brought to trial aboard human vessels, her fleet began the systematic dismantling of their empire. Military installations were destroyed, government officials were arrested, and the brutal system that had executed a child for curiosity was torn apart piece by piece. Other galactic powers watched in stunned silence as humanity revealed the true scope of their capabilities. The modest species that had been seeking council membership was actually the most advanced civilization in known space. Their technology, their fleet, and their reach far exceeded anything the council had imagined. Species that had voted for Maya's execution began sending desperate diplomatic messages to Earth, begging for mercy and offering reparations. But Torres' response was consistent and unforgiving. "You had a choice," she told each delegation. "When a child's life hung in the balance, you chose politics over justice. You chose convenience over courage. Now you live with the consequences." The trial of Hierarch Zethkar took place aboard the human flagship, broadcast live to every world in the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings of the execution, testimony from witnesses, and documentation of the Vortaki, laws that demanded death for such minor offenses. When the verdict was announced, guilty of murder and crimes against sentient life, Zethkar finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. "You were never the prey," he said quietly to Torres after the sentence was pronounced. "We were." "Yes," Torres replied without emotion. "From the moment we made contact with galactic civilization, we were studying you, learning from you, preparing for the day when your true nature would be revealed. Maya's death simply told us everything we needed to know about who our real enemies were." The execution of Hierarch Zethkar was carried out the same way Maya Chen had died. Quickly, efficiently, and broadcast for all to see. But unlike the child's death, this one served justice rather than satisfying bloodlust. In the months that followed, the Vortaki Empire ceased to exist. Their worlds were placed under human administration, their surviving leaders faced trial for various crimes, and their rigid laws were replaced with codes that valued life over tradition. The Galactic Council found itself fundamentally changed. Species that had previously held power through military might now face the reality of human superiority. Votes were reconsidered, alliances were rearranged, and everyone began to treat Earth with the respect they should have shown from the beginning. Admiral Torres returned to Earth a hero, but she took no satisfaction in the victory.